I have to ask you, Rudy, you sound like you're all business. I want to convict these guys. I'm somebody, I want to clean up the streets. I love my city, so on. Michael, it was more personal for you guys. I've actually talked to you about this because the mob, they just get rid of you if you're a problem. Was there any talk of getting rid of Rudy Giuliani back in the day?
Yes, there was. Yes, there was. And I had mentioned this before. There was talk of getting rid of two people. Number one was Rudy. And this is uncommon because remember, there was never, it was hands off. We didn't go after law enforcement. We didn't go after their families. That was a rule.
Well, you actually said that. If you don't mind, I just want to reiterate for those who didn't catch this last time. You said we leave law enforcement alone if they do it fair and square. If they get us fair and square, you got us. If you cheat, then we have a problem. Rudy wasn't cheating, right?
No, I mean, look, who knows what we were thinking at that time? We're always right and everybody else is wrong. That's how we thought it back then, especially law enforcement. But no, it was hands off no matter what. Even if we felt we were being framed, you weren't allowed to go after law enforcement. There was an exception. There was two exceptions that I was aware of. One of them was Rudy. He was number one on the list, and there was a lot of talk about that. And then secondly was Geraldo Rivera, believe it or not. People didn't like him. And there was talk about eliminating him.
But Rudy, he just rubbed people the wrong way. I get Rudy, not that I wanted it to happen. Thank God it didn't. But why Geraldo?
Nobody liked him. He had just gone after the mob at certain times, and things that he said, probably rubbed one person in particular wrong. Who knows? But the word was kind of out on him. But it was a definite thing with Rudy, and I had mentioned this before. Rudy, you probably know this.
Rudy, you knew there was a hit on your head?
I know about it because there was one meeting of the commission in which a couple of days after I got notified by the FBI that I might need protection. I didn't have protection then, but I might need protection. And I said, why? I had had a contract from the Sicilian Mafia when I first became U.S. attorney because of the Pisa connection case.
Wow.
And we found the people and we resolved it. But then they came to me one day and they said, you're going to have to listen to these tapes. And the tapes were conversations that Fat Tony, Carmine Persico, maybe Castellano, they had the conversation after the meeting because we didn't actually tape the meeting. We taped them having conversations about the meeting after it was over. And they talked about having gone to a vote about killing me. And they voted 3-2. And Carmine Persico voted not to kill me.
Wow.
And Fat Tony. I don't know about the rest, but I had the two of them. So when I prosecuted Persico, we put him in jail for 100 years with the rest of them, with Fat Tony. He was kind of okay with that. But then, we prosecuted them again because there's a theory under RICO that they're not only on the commission, and that's a business enterprise, but then they run their own family, which is another business.
Right.
So we prosecuted him again with all of his capo regimes and soldiers, and there was about 20 people in the case. And he was so upset that he was getting prosecuted again. He was really pissed off. I mean, really, really upset. How can this guy do this? I'm already going for 100 years. What am I going to go for 200 years? He just wants me around to torture me. And one day he tells somebody, he offers him $200,000 to kill me, which I always knew was temper, but the FBI took it seriously. The FBI came to me and said, you know what? He used to be called behind his back Carmine the Snake. They wouldn't call him the Snake in front of him. They said, you know what the Snake did? He was over in the prison. He put out $200,000 to kill you. I said, bull. He said, no, this is serious. He's a crazy guy. He's not that crazy. They said, no, we got to protect you. So they actually started getting all of his conversations from prison. And he was basically having a temper tantrum that it just wasn't fair. That it was, and he even was using a good legal theory, which is they already have me convicted. and they're using me to prejudice the case against everybody else.
Right.
Well, you're damn right we were. That's exactly what
That was
we
the
were doing.
job, though, right? That was the job. It's Rudy
That was
Giuliani.
the issue on appeal. We almost lost the case on that issue. We finally won it. But sure, it was a much. All I brought in were now all the little guys, right?
Well,
And I didn't bring in the boss.
Right.
It just becomes a different kind of case in front of the jury emotionally. So he was being misused. Fat Tony was very upset about that. And Fat Tony lost his temper and threatened the judge and apologized.
Well, that's kind of a dumb move. That's kind of a dumb move. Now, by the way, as much as they didn't call Persico the snake to his face, I don't think they called Fat Tony to his face. In fact, Michael, I asked you that once. You said no. We didn't call him Fat Tony to his face. But the bottom line is, it was serious business. I mean, by one vote, Rudy, they didn't vote to kill you. I mean, does that work in your brain at all, or did you just blow it off and do the job?
I always agreed with Michael. I thought they would get angry. They might sometimes say it. They might sometimes even vote it, but they wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
It would have been too catastrophic to do it.
Well, too risky, too high profile. That was it. Yeah.
They had always gotten through because they were restrained and careful. I mean, some of the famous Mafia hits were people that they thought were going to cause them trouble. You know, people who would come out of jail and they thought they'd be too wild and too. I mean, that's why what Gotti did was completely inconsistent with the sort of history of the Mafia, to go get attention for yourself.
Right.
Even Bonanno just did it when he got old and was dotty. Bonanno used to pretend to be some kind of businessman. People in his neighborhood thought of him as a nice old man, a nice guy. The people in Arizona loved him. When I went into the hospital to question him and have a hearing with him, the nuns were terrible to me in the hospital. Why are you going after this nice man?
Wow. Can you imagine?
He built the hospital for us. He never did anything wrong in Arizona. Well, if he did it in New York, he left New York. The nuns were fighting with me.
That's crazy. It is Rudy Giuliani, Rudy's Common Sense. Get to that website, rudyscommonsense.com. Michael Franzese, michaelfranzese.com. It's an historic sit-down, and I appreciate you guys doing it. I want to fast forward because I know that everybody's busy, but I want to get as much in as I possibly can. Michael, when you finally were sentenced, it was 10 years, but you had the change of heart and the change of soul, basically, because of something that a prison guard did when he saw that you were like on the brink, like you didn't even want to live anymore, right?
Yeah, well, what happened, I did 5 years on that case. I came out, I was home for about, I think, 13 months, and then I violated my parole, and they put me back in, and, they're bringing other cases up, and you're never going to see the street again. They told my wife the same thing. So, that first night, they kept me in lockdown for almost 3 years, but that first night was probably the worst night of my life to that point. And, I was laying there, it's hard to describe the feeling when you think that, at 39 years old or 40 years old, whatever I was, that's it. A 6x8 cell is the rest of your life. You're separated from your loved ones. This is the way to live, and I was depressed. There's no question about it. And the prison guard had walked by my cell. He looked in on me and he said, "Franzese, you don't look good. Are you okay?" And I chased him. I said, "Look, get away from me, man. I don't want to see any of you guys tonight." And he came back, about a minute later and pushed the Bible through the slot on the door. And, honestly, Joe, I spent 29 months and 7 days in the hole. And that was the time when, if you call this a transformation, when, I really started to study the Bible. I had my wife send me in, several, I can't even imagine, hundreds of books, about my faith and every other faith, because, thanks to Rudy and people out there, I was very in tune with evidence. Evidence was a major part of my life. I'm always trying to find evidence, usually to, to acquit myself. And so I was really into the evidence that supported, biblical truths. And I was convinced during that time, that the Bible is the way to go. And that's when my transformation as a Christian really took hold through that 3 years.
And as that happened, Michael, were you in prison after Rudy was already the mayor or before he was the mayor?
It was after. He had become the mayor while I was there. And
you tell a story about going back to New York, and you asked the feds or whoever it was that was driving you around to take you through part of the city that you hadn't seen in a while. Would you mind telling that story with Rudy here?
Yeah, I'll tell you what happened. It was 1991. I had done 5 years in prison. I was out 13 months. Then they violated me, and they picked me up in California, drove me into New York. And I was with the marshals, and I said, "Hey, what time do I have to, see the judge?" And they're nice guys, you know, the marshals are cool. And they said, we got a couple hours. I said, hey, do me a favor. I haven't had, you know, a cup of coffee from, oh gosh, I can't think of the coffee place now. I'm losing my head. But anyway, I said, I haven't had this coffee, and why don't you drive me around the city? I haven't been here in a while. I want to see what it looks like. So they said, sure. Oh, it was Dunkin' Donuts. So we went to Dunkin' Donuts, and then we drove around Manhattan, and we went down to Times Square, and I could not believe it. I said, this isn't where I grew up. This city has been reformed. It's been rejuvenated. And, you know, it was all about Mayor Giuliani. He did the job. And I was shocked, Rudy, honestly. I had never seen it like that from the time I was a kid. And the job that you did, I said, man, this is, you know, I was very impressed with it. And then, of course, you know, 2001 came about. And, you know, you may not understand this, but a lot of mob guys, we may have been criminals, but we were still patriots. You know, a lot of guys went to war. They fought for their country. You know, and, you know, we didn't want to see our country go down the drain. Trust me, a lot of us felt that way. And, you know, what you did for the city, I really appreciated it. You know, I have daughters that live there, and, you know, I had still family there, and it was great to see it like that. And then, of course, 2001, I think everybody from New York appreciated the job you did at that point. I mean, my daughter was working, you know, just a short distance away from the towers when they went down. And I hadn't heard from her because communication was shut off. I was a nervous wreck. I was out in California. I was a nervous wreck for some 12 hours. I hadn't been able to hear from her. And of course, I was so, I'm going to be honest with you, I don't want to, you know, divert the conversation, but I had worked on the Twin Towers when I was a kid, you know, and I was a laborer. My dad got me a job in the union during the summer. And I was just, of course, I visited many times afterwards, you know, in meetings, but I could not even understand, you know, how that tower came down. It was beyond my recognition at the time, realizing how immense that building was, you know. So, and the job you did afterwards, Rudy, you know, I said I really appreciate it.
So it's eightfold what he said, but let me just reiterate, and if you don't mind, give me a commentary. He respected what you did for New York. Mobsters are also patriots, which does, I mean, it kind of rubs you. Really? Okay.
I think I
go ahead.
Understand that. Yeah.
And his respect for what you did for the city. Go ahead.
Well, I really appreciate that, but I also should tell you and Michael, you know, I have a very, very, you know, broad-minded view of the mob because I got to learn them so well by listening to them on tape.
Right.
So at one point, they could be talking about, you know, whacking up a sanitation route or trying to collect some money, loan sharking money. And on the other, they could be talking about problems they're having with their son in getting into college or getting into school. Or Fat Tony was constantly having problems with his wife, Margaret, who always wanted him to come home because she said he had come out of retirement and he was only supposed to work 3 or 4 days and they were going to kill him. I mean, after a while, you say to yourself, these are mostly regular human beings who somehow got into this.
Right.
Every once in a while, you get a mad murderer. You get the people. I always sort of separated it into the ones that like to commit murder and the ones who had to do it, but they didn't like it. You know, Gotti was a madman. He was a madman both with regard to the stupidity of getting so much attention for himself and everybody else. Eventually, no matter how many times you escape, they make it necessary for the government to have to get you. Right? I mean, you got the president of the United States telling the prosecutors, you got to get him.
Right.
I mean, that happened with Nicky Barnes because Nicky Barnes was on the front page, which I'm an African-American drug dealer. He was on the front page of the New York Times as, you know, the top guy in Harlem. He wasn't the top guy in Harlem. But Jimmy Carter saw it. I wasn't the U.S. attorney. Then he called the U.S. attorney and they got to get him.
That's it. Get him.
Now, all of a sudden, you got these prosecutors getting pushed by the president of the United States to go after this guy, whereas he could have operated for 30 years and nobody would have cared who he was. The old guys understood that. I mean, most of the old names we mentioned, maybe Joe Colombo was an exception to that. Joey Gallo was an exception to that. There were a couple of people who were exceptions, but most of them pretended to be in another life. And most of them did have another life.
Michael,
the same life that you or I have.
I got to ask Michael about that. Is that Michael? Are mobsters regular guys who just also do some crime on the side? I mean, the same problems with the wife and how are we going to make the mortgage or who's going to college? I mean, is that really, are you guys just regular guys and then you do some other stuff that we wouldn't do?
Well, I think what Rudy said was very accurate. You know, Joe, there were guys on the street that seemed to enjoy, doing the heavy work. Guys like, I can mention them because they're gone and they're well-known people. I'm not saying anything out of school, but guys like Roy DeMeo and Nicky Black and guys like that who just seem to enjoy the kind of work that, most of us, hey, if we had to do something, we were told to do it, we do it. That was it. But we didn't get into we didn't enjoy doing that stuff. We weren't there for that reason. And I think a lot of guys were like that. Most of the guys were like that. And then what Rudy said was correct. The Joe Colombos, Joey Gallows, Carmine Galante, John Gotti, guys like that were so high profile, they were not spoken well of because they brought heat on everybody else. I mean, I remember walking the picket line, that Joe Colombo organized with the Italian American Civil Rights League. We were on 69th Street and 3rd Avenue, and we were walking that picket line every day, and made guys, I wasn't made at that time, I was a recruit, but made guys were walking the line cursing Joe Colombo. He said, they're taking photos of us. These people don't even know who we are. Now we're going to be on blast with the FBI. Everybody's going to know who we are. They were very, very upset about it. So you don't want that kind of an attention. And even myself, I think my attention came because, I made a lot of money and I had a jet plane and all that. And of course I had the name. I mean, my father was extremely high profile in the 60s, so it fell on me. But, and that didn't do anybody any good either. So, the lower profile that you are, the less people know you in that life, the better off you are. And those guys with the high profile, they never last. I mean, just look at them. They don't last. They're gone. One way or the other. Either we take care of them or the government takes care of them.
What's interesting is that you both have said this for the past 45 minutes, basically, that it was the mob that did the best investigating for the law enforcement. I mean, Rudy, what Michael just said exactly plays into what you said, a while ago, which is you wrote the book, you're out there, picketing, you're taking pictures, you're driving flashy cars, you're telling us about how great your life is, you're in magazines, and Michael, you were even in the magazine, you're being interviewed by the local people. I mean, basically, they did a lot of your legwork, didn't they?
Yeah, and not being careful about telephone calls. You got to assume if you're in the mob, everything's going to be tape recorded. We were in an era before it was an era before you would assume that people could break in the way the FBI could. Right. It was one of the great talents they had, which they had developed over 30 years of pursuing communism. And one of the great criticisms of Hoover is, instead of going after the mob, he went after communism. Well, I'm not sure he didn't pick the right priority, but in any event, those guys who went after the communists, they were burglars. I mean, they were robbers. They were second-story men. They were as good or better than the guys who did it for a living on the street. They would know how to get into your house, leave no trace of it. In the case of Matty, we made his office a television studio. This is way back in the 80s. Little tiny television cameras about this big. Wow. That were hidden. And then the rest of them we would put microphones in. In Fat Tony's social club, we had 18 microphones. It was like a studio.
That's crazy.
I mean, we could listen to their conversations about baseball, about gambling. Now, you have to minimize. What that means is I have to be really careful. So let's say if I were to have Michael back then on tape, if he were to call his wife, and I find out, and I realize in that first conversation that his wife is not involved. He calls her up, he says, "I'll be home for dinner, honey." And she says, "Oh, the kids aren't doing well." I have to put in a note saying the minute he calls his wife, we got to cut it off. Wow. Now, if I don't do that, his lawyer can get the entire tape, the entire thing. This could be a $3 million investment of 8 months of tapes. Whole thing gets thrown out. So we were very, very disciplined about that. And some of those conversations you really wanted to listen to because they were interesting. It was like watching a movie.
It's sort of like a soap opera.
My kids, I didn't do this. My kids did it. They were just young kids. And they would, somebody's having an argument with his wife or his girlfriend, or he's got a girlfriend and a wife and he's keeping them separate. And the guy wants to figure out, oh, are they going to find out about each other?
You got to hear the resolution. You don't get to hear the resolution.
After a while, it's like they're watching a movie, so I would have to go in and give them a lecture and explain to them, we are not watching a movie.
Right.
This is for real, guys.
And by the way, by law, if you're not investigating the wife, you have to shut it off because she's not the one who you have the warrant for.
The doctor, this one, or that one. But then here's the tough one. When you find out they're going to kill somebody, you find out we're going to whack this guy.
Wow.
What do you do? Do you stop it and jeopardize the wire? Do you arrest him? Do you warn the guy? So basically, it only happened to us 3 times. We warned the person.
Yeah.
And took a risk.
And did that warning become turn them into a witness? Did that become part of the because there's no way they could stay in the street. They're going to be killed. I mean,
only in one case. The other 2 guys just accepted it and went on, did what they did. They went away for a while, came back. The 3rd guy turned.
I want to finish it here, guys. It's Rudy Giuliani, America's Mayor, rudyscommonsense.com, Michael Franzese, michaelfranzese.com. Become part of his crew. I want to end it with this last question for both of you, and it's the same question, basically. And it's a 2-part. Did you ever think almost 40 years later you would sit down and have a conversation like this? And how has your opinion of the guy you're talking with right now, not me, obviously, how has that changed over the years? Michael, I want to start with you if you don't mind.
No, I would have never believed that this would happen. But I'm thrilled that it happened. I really am. And look, I am so thankful in life that my perspective has changed. I grew up with this distorted sense of view where, good was bad, bad was good. And that was as a result of my upbringing and seeing what my dad went through and my family. But I came to realize later on, it's like I had this conversation with my dad, and I'll get through it quickly. My dad was always angry, He never would take responsibility for what went down in our family as a result of him being involved in the life. We had a rough time. My sister died of drugs. My brother became an informant, 25-year drug addict. My mother and him, a horrible relationship in the end. And he used to say to me, Mike, I was framed. If I wasn't framed and went to prison, none of this would have happened. I said, Dad, I know that. But even if you were framed, which I don't agree with, you weren't framed for being a doctor, a lawyer, or a priest. You were a criminal guy. This is what we did. We understood, the pitfalls of that life. So my perspective has changed, and I can look at people differently. Just want to say this. I recently had a pretty heated discussion with a former mob guy, I'm not going to mention his name, over Joe Pistone. He got upset that I interviewed Joe, and I've been knowing Joe for 15, 18 years now. We've been on panels together. I really happen to like him.
Donnie Brasco, right? Just for those who are watching, Donnie Brasco.
Donnie Brasco. Fortunately, I only met him once when we were in the street. Never did anything with him then. But I said to the guy, I said, what are you upset about? I said, he was he was law enforcement. He did his job better than we did our job. He was able to stay undercover for 6 years while we fell asleep, maybe trying to make a buck with this guy or doing whatever. I said, why are you mad at him? That was his job. You can't get mad at him. He did his job. And the guy couldn't understand that mentality. And, I feel the same way now. Guys did their job. They were on the other side. I'll be honest with you, too. My father taught me. He said, you don't disrespect law enforcement. You don't, when you go to prison, you don't be a jerk with the guards. You be respectful to everybody. Hopefully you'll get the same respect back. And, you just fight them the way you have to fight them. And so I think, Rudy, I was looking forward to this. I really mean it. I respect a lot of the... I mean it. I respect, a lot of the things that you've done over the years, even up until recently, which we don't have to get into. I have a lot of respect for what you did. And Joe, because that's a whole nother hour.
For the next interview, that's another hour later down the line if we can. So there's a matter of respect now. I mean, you saw what he did with the city. You see what he's done ever since. And your perspective is the guy did his job really, really well. So how can you not respect that?
Absolutely.
Rudy, your thoughts 37 years later. Have you given much thought to Michael? Do you believe him that he's a new guy?
I do. But even before this. So, I'm very happy that we've had this conversation. But really, I have to tell you, it confirms what I sort of decided 10, 12 years ago, just in reading and thinking about Michael and talking to friends about him. It was clear to me that what at the time, I kind of had an instinct, I don't know why, that what he was talking about originally was more legitimate than most people. Yeah. But I wasn't sure. And then I've watched him develop. I've watched him on television. I've read a lot of the things that he's written, and I was very happy about it. because I think that this is what can happen to human beings, no matter how. I mean, this is what I believe as a Christian, as a Catholic, that you can change, you can turn. Not everybody. I believe this about drug addicts. I mean, I have friends that were very bad drug addicts a while back, and I have friends who died of drug addiction. So the human personality is endlessly fascinating, and God has different directions for us. And I think the direction from Michael is he can be so helpful to other people, not necessarily even people in the mob, but people who have done things wrong in their life, and they have to figure out how to turn it around. And the minute you asked if I would do this, I said yes, right?
You did, yeah.
So I was looking forward to meeting Michael and to seeing him, and I hope we get to do it in person, Michael.
That would be awesome. They say we have to set up the actual sit down after COVID and all that. You guys would be down for that, right?
We'd have to use an Italian restaurant.
It would have to be an Italian restaurant.
Absolutely.
Well, Rudy, go ahead, Michael.
No, I said absolutely. I would welcome that. Look forward to it, Rudy. Definitely.
It is Michael Franzese. Go to michaelfranzese.com. It's Franzese. Go there and become part of his crew. He has changed lives and he has helped a lot of people. And I'm glad that we were able to connect, Michael. I'm glad that we could make this happen. Rudy's Common Sense. Go to rudyscommonsense.com. Listen to him on the radio. Watch him when he's on media outlets, and he's fighting hard for America every day, just like he did for New York City. Rudy, thank you very much. This has been historic.
Thank you for doing this, Pac.
Well, I'll tell you this, guys. The most important interview I've ever done is when I was called to the green room by President Donald Trump to sit down and interview him face to face. This, to me, is my second favorite thing I've ever done in 31 years in broadcasting.
That's very nice.
So thank you very much for taking the time, both of you. I appreciate you.
Well, thank you, Joe. Thank you very much. I got to tell you, this was epic. It was classic for me. You may not feel that way, but you got to understand, he and I were on opposite sides, of the fence at one time, and Rudy Giuliani was not a guy that was well liked on the street at all. I mean, he put everybody away, prosecuted everybody, and was very successful, by the way. And that's it. So how do I always leave you? Be safe, be healthy, God bless, and I will see you next time. All right, Rudy, thank you. Okay, bye-bye now. God bless. That was effing epic.
Crazy.
What he said in the end was absolutely, this is priceless stuff. We're going to have a field day with this.
It's the day and age we live in, though. It's just,
wow.
Thinking about it, it's just crazy.
Wow. Epic. I'm telling you.